Finn Graves here, and in my last video I was talking about finding your voice as an artist, and I was sitting there and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the fact that I mentioned the trajectory of being an emerging artist. And so I want to talk about my trajectory as an emerging artist. Like 20 years into making art. I'm 35, so know that. I've definitely been making art at least 30 hours a week, every week since I was 15. Yeah, with school, with everything, with jobs. And so, yeah, I'm gonna talk about my trajectory as an emerging artist. So go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. They may be in different directions, I'm not sure exactly where they are. And let's get started. Okay, so my trajectory as an emerging artist began when I was a teenager. I realized kind of early that we were quite poor. And so I figured out one of the ways that, because one of my top love languages is gifts. I love to give people gifts. My boss and the owner of the shop that I work at, Ammon, he made me laugh. Like last week, I showed up and I handed him something. I was like, I asked this for you. And he's like, oh, Finn's gift of the day. And I was like, oh. And then I thought about it. I usually show up with something after I've been gone for a while, and I'd been gone for like a week and a half from work. And so I was like, I was thinking about you. I have this thing and I bring it to you and it is for you. And so as a teenager, realizing we were really, really poor, we couldn't buy things for people. And I wanted to bring them things. I didn't really feel like I needed to buy people's attention. Everybody already thought I was like a weird art girl, which I have continued to be. And I just like, I wanted to bring things to people that I cared about. So like a little magpie, I'd pick up things and I'd like put them together and I'd make them into these interesting conglomerate ideas and concepts. But the main goal and the purpose behind things for me making art, was to make presents for other people to have and to process my emotions. So I grew up in a decently traumatic environment. I was raised in a cult, and my mother will kill me for saying that, even though I've been saying it for like literally 15 years. And I was raised in a cult, and I was about 19 years old when I realized that all of the cult things were kind of lies. And I was just like, oh my God, there's like, you've been lying to me. You've been lying to me about all of this stuff. And my mom was like, no, this is the way of the truth in the world and the one God. And my girlfriend at the time, not me, this is self-portrait, Nora, who is my best friend. She's amazing. I love her to bits. I'm actually lucky. I have like 5 besties as a person. ADHD. I have not taken my medications today. But trajectory, cult. Ah, yes. And so Nora is very science-based. She was going to WSU for zoology, and she started explaining like these like evolution to me and different like scientific methodologies and the concepts around these things. And I thought that they really resonated with art, honestly. I thought that the way that those things worked out, sorry, my other things were doing stuff, focused. I thought that the way that scientific methodology came across seemed very, very much like the way that the process of art is made. And art is a very organic process for me. But for me, like again, my main proponents are making things for other people and healing. And so as I started to dive into my artistic process, I was a few years into reading Julie Cameron's The Artist's Way, which I recommended in the last video and I'm recommending again in this video. I highly do. It's a great book. I had started like seeing who I was. I was reading my journals. I was paying attention to my processes. I was looking at my sketchbooks. I'd had a whole 1 art class by that time. Nope, 2. I had 2 art classes. I took a college art class, independent studies, where I just drew whatever I wanted. My teacher drew on top of it. And I took an art class with my buddy Lucas Miller, who is also one of my good friends still to this day. And I remember we just drew a lot of charcoal in that high school art class. But what I found was that my emotions, which are, I have large, expansive, epic emotions, and they like run through me like storms. Especially if I'm struggling. If I'm not in like the healthiest place, my emotions just and I've gotten really good at redirecting and containing that process. But most of the reasons that I make art is still to experience my own emotions in a safe environment. Like this piece, like this one is called Complex Grief. And it's me just feeling the last year, the last 3 years of my life, because they've been really hard. And I know that they've been really hard for you too, especially 2020 was hard for everyone. I spent a lot of time really worried that my mom was gonna die, because she has a lot of heart conditions. She doesn't take very good care of herself. And then I got hit by a semi in a car, and I still keep talking about it, so it's not worked out of my system because it recalibrated how my brain worked, and I'm not able to do the things that I was able to do before that. And I got divorced, and so I got divorced from like the person that I love so very, very, very much. And I'm a year out of that, and a year, almost 2 years out of getting hit by the semi, and my body is back mostly. I still have, I think I have long-term nerve damage, which does affect my tattooing, but it just kicked my ass. So I haven't been painting. This is actually the first big painting I've done working for myself with me during this process, and it's so much better to just like let things go and let things out of my body. And I couldn't do it before this. I took a month off. I'm doing an artist retreat, staycation kind of artist retreat for a month, and this is a good part of my process. I think it's actually a really important aspect, but it's later into my art process, right? So there I am. I'm a teenager. I'm 19. I'm just discovering I'm gay. I like tell my girlfriend that I would marry her if she were a man, and she's like, pew, pew, pew. And I'm like, oh, as an adult queer woman now, I can tell that was pretty shitty. We still laugh about it. And then we moved to Pullman, Washington, where we go to WSU, and I cover our living room. And this is still part of that emerging process, right? I cover our living room with photographs of her and just like drawings of her and portraits of her. And I actually just came across those last week and finally went through and looked at them and was like, okay, I can let those go. And I put them in the fire. She's gonna be very relieved to hear that, because it drove her nuts to see, it drove Nora nuts to see that many pictures of herself everywhere. But I loved it, and they were weird faces. They weren't like, oh, I'm so glamorous, not like paint me like one of your French girls, but much more like, you know, kind of weird expressions, because what I was doing is I was developing as an artist. And so we're at WSU, and I get into this figure drawing class, and I realize that it's people. I fucking adore people. Like, I like them. I enjoy interacting with them. I enjoy connecting with them. I like that process of experiencing space and time with another person. To me, I'm an important person and you're an important person. And so if we're here together being important people, then we're having this dialogue and this conversation behind things. And so I got into an art show in college. And oftentimes when we think of the trajectory of an artist, people see it as steps, right? It's not steps. It's much more spirals. You're like, oh, I got into an art show. Oh, nobody wants to buy my work. Oh, so I'm in college and I did a sculpture class, and I worked through an epic miscarriage that I'd had that had a lot of trauma that came along with it. I made these gorgeous womb pods made out of this apple wood, and I bound them together, and they held, and they were like half of my body size. So they're like 4 feet tall. And I talked to this room full of other sculptural artists who were all men. I was the only female in that room, about having a miscarriage and about the trauma around that experience. And then I did a completely different, for my final thesis, during that class, thesis is the wrong word, for my final project, because I did not do grad school art stuff. For my final project, I did this interesting sculptural experience of like kitschy knickknacks in these gray painted Staples paper boxes. And I put these different stuffed animals. I will work with kids' toys quite frequently. I think it's because I have a lot of childhood trauma. And so I have all of these toys around me to like interact with and work with. And I put them all up, and I got a B+ in that class. And I like bared my soul for the process, and I showed up and I did the work. I mean, like I like specifically stitched these little animals together, and I like painted these boxes by hand. I didn't even spray paint them. That's so much easier, by the way. Spray paint boxes if you get the chance. It's faster and easier. And I'm in this classroom over and over again, and this is a trajectory of my life, is that over and over again, my peers around me are men, and I haven't gotten to collaborate with a lot of female artists, and I adore them. Like, most of my friends are females, but as artists, I've mostly collaborated with males, or like had to show up and show off or showcase in a very male identified world, like a lot of us. So I'm not saying that my style is really any different from anyone else. I just keep showing up. And so after college, I became a nanny, and so I started collaborating and working with children quite frequently. And actually, I've raised like 9 little boys out of all of the kids that I've worked with over like a 19-year trajectory of being a nanny and working with kids. Only one of those little kids was a little girl. She was adopted, and I liked her a lot. All of the rest of them were little boys, and mostly I dealt in multiples. So I worked with one family with 3 boys. I worked with another family with 3 boys. My last family that I worked with, a little boy, he was like my dream baby. Oh my goodness, he was amazing. I get to hang out with him, and he's freaking great. Just little monster creatures. I love little monsters. But that process, I'm still emerging, right, during this whole process and trajectory. And I've been in Portland like 10 years, let's say, working with all these different kids, and I'm beginning to gain other artist connections. I had collaborations with 2 different male artists for like a 7-year period. Nope, one was a 7-year period and the other was a 2-year period. And all 3 of us would like work together, and over and over and over again, I'm collaborating with other artists, because people are the thing that I'm most interested in. People and healing and vulnerability and animals and curiosity and experimentation and writing and painting. Like, I love those things. And so a friend of mine, 2 years ago, maybe 3. Oh man, time passes. 3 years ago, before the semi and the divorce and me I was worried about my mom at that time period, because I was in the same time period. He offered to let me sell his art at Saturday Market, and I realized I loved it. Like, I loved the stories behind things, and I loved the way that the stories became part of the art piece, and the concepts and the ways of doing it. And I actually found my home at Apollo Tattoo, which is where I work now as an artist. I'm a tattoo artist there. I found my home because I was selling my buddy Christopher Craith's art at Saturday Market. Like, this guy, what's his name? He's not tattooing right now. But okay, so this green-eyed guy comes up to me and is like, "Hey, mama." And I'm like, And he's like, "I like this art." And I'm like, "Okay." And so we like start talking about the art, and then we start talking, and I tell him that I really like tattooing, and I'm not currently tattooing, but I liked doing it. And he's like, "You should go see my buddy Ammon." And then 2 years later, I'm still at that shop, and I'm still an emerging artist, because I'm 2 years into tattooing. And I would say it took coming back from COVID for me to actually be a tattoo artist. I spent the first like 3 months there as a tattoo artist, and then we decided that I had a lot of unlearning to do, and so we backed everything up and I became an apprentice, and I did a lot of apprentice style work while also recovering from getting hit by a semi. These guys like decided I was theirs, and I decided that they were mine. I am so happy for that. I am so deeply grateful for the trajectory of things I've had in my life. I just feel like sometimes the universe just makes you take it slowly so that you can find your place, because your place wasn't quite ready for you yet, you know? And I'm coming into that stage where probably about 5 years from now is when I will be an established artist. And that difference is there. Like, I have my work in a gallery in Portland. I occasionally sell work online. I do this lovely creativity letter thing that I started this year through my Patreon. I have regular tattoo clients that come in. I pay my bills with art, but this is like the last 3 years of the process of being an emerging artist. And I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to see and to feel those stages and just allow those stages to be part of everything. So your story is going to be different from mine significantly, just because you're literally in a different location and you're housed in a different body. Like, add on top of that sexuality, the mediums you prefer, the people you interact with, like the animals that are in your life, the environment, like the physical, natural, or urban environment you're in, and everything you do is going to be different. However, that emerging artist trajectory is about 10 years. You know, it takes about 10 years of continuously doing the work because you have to do the work, or you desperately want to do the work to find your way. They say there's 2 ways to make it in the art world. Like, really hard work or a lot of money. And I definitely didn't have a lot of money. And I didn't need a lot of money, to be honest. I'm very creative. I'm very curious. I desire and I love to connect with people and form community. And that vibe is kind of my currency. Like, things show up for me when I need them. I have enough and I keep going. So yeah, that's kind of like the overview of my trajectory as an emerging artist. And I hope you go write yours down. Let yourself have the time that you need, you know? Like, let yourself have the time that you need. Okay. Hit the like, drop me a comment if you have any thoughts, and I'll see you next week. We post on Mondays.